Welcome to Managing Uncertainty, a podcast series from the experts at Bryghtpath discussing global risk, business continuity, and crisis management. Will you be ready to lead your organization through its critical moment?
Welcome to a special edition of the Managing Uncertainty podcast. Special because we just released an episode this morning about National Preparedness Month. And because we've spent the last, Jen, 10-ish days
or so
working on Hurricane Harvey for a number of clients in the Texas area, where we've helped them manage preparedness response. And now we're really kind of in the long-term recovery stage for the businesses. They've all reopened. For our clients anyway, there's other businesses. But now we've got another problem.
Yeah, Hurricane Irma's on her way.
Here comes Irma.
Yes.
So as we're recording this, and we're recording this on Tuesday, September 5th.
Late afternoon.
In the late afternoon.
End of business day even.
Hurricane Irma is now a Category 5 hurricane. It's 180 miles to the east of Antigua. It's expected to make landfall, or right now I guess parallel, along the land of the Leeward Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. And at some point it's going to make a northerly turn, and we don't know at this point if it's going to be before Florida, over Florida, or in the Gulf of Mexico after Florida.
Or exact timing, really. We don't know that yet.
Or exact timing. But as we heard from NOAA in the National Hurricane Center about 2 hours ago on a call, this is now the strongest hurricane in history in the Atlantic Ocean. So it's insane.
Yeah, I don't know if people realize how big that is, how absolutely massive this thing is.
It's moving at 100. I'm sorry, its wind is north of 185 miles an hour wind speed.
Yep.
Plus it's moving at, I think it was 14 miles an hour to the west.
Yeah,
northwest.
for all weather geeks like myself, I have the radar up looking at this massive circle coming towards the continental United States.
And it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. So we've had a lot of people reaching out. We've got a lot of clients that we're working with and more that we're talking with now about assisting. But we have a lot of folks asking what they should do.
Yeah, so we thought it'd be a good idea to hop on special edition, like you said.
A special edition.
And kind of talk through some of the lessons learned in the past and recently from Harvey and what some of the recommendations are going into Irma.
And I think to put this in context, I mean, I've managed major hurricanes going back to 2005 with Katrina, Rita, Wilma, which were, three massive hurricanes that all came in the same 50-day time period. Mm-hmm. And Hurricane Katrina being, at the time, the most expensive hurricane in U.S. history, which I think is going to be eclipsed by Harvey. Mm-hmm. And yet to see what happens with Irma. But we've done this on a large scale, a national scale, for both our previous employer and now for a number of clients.
And don't forget Sandy.
And don't forget Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, which was really not that strong of a hurricane. It was wasn't a major hurricane when it came ashore, but because it was so slow moving and so big, it caused such a significant amount of damage and flooding because of that.
Yeah, and they're all special in their own way, right? They all bring in their own special problems, I guess.
They do indeed.
Yeah.
So first we start with personal preparedness. And we've talked about this before, but in order to be resilient at work or in your company or at your nonprofit, you have to be resilient at home. So it's kind of echoing our National Preparedness Month message.
Yeah, we just talked extensively about that, about National Preparedness Month. This morning that podcast aired.
It did?
Or was it yesterday?
No, it came out this morning.
Yep, exactly. So definitely refer to that for personal preparedness. There's a lot of information out there. Ready.gov provides a ton of information on how you can prepare.
We've done a blog post on this topic, and then we talk about it on the podcast that was released this morning on episode 14.
Yep.
The second thing that you need to do today, right away, is the time to be making connections with your partners on the other side of the public-private aisle is now. Yesterday would have been even better. But there's the saying that U.S. Northern Command has, which is when you need a friend, it's too late to make one.
Yep.
Or I heard it expressed the other day on a FEMA call as the time to exchange business cards is not in a disaster zone. But your partners, whoever they are, State of Florida Emergency Management, Miami-Dade County Emergency Management,
Yep,
FEMA,
your city, your county, your neighborhood watch programs.
do it now.
Do it now.
Do it now. And particularly if you're in the state of Florida, you should be looking at FEMA's National Business Emergency Operations Center and how you can join. You can go to FEMA.gov/NBEOC for information. All you need to do is fill out a simple application, sign the form, send it in. They will take care of it immediately within the hour.
Yep.
I've seen. And you'll be on their mailing list. You'll be invited to the private sector calls. It's definitely not a place to go and ask 15 questions, but it is a place to go and hear what they're hearing, what the weather forecast is, how they're reacting, what they think you should be doing. And if you got the big question, like how do I get access to Harris County, Texas? What's the fuel situation in Southeast Louisiana?
Yep.
They know it, and they'll be able to answer those questions for you.
That's right.
Your state emergency management agency probably has something similar. I know Florida does. You'll want to look into that and then see what their vetting process is. Get on their mailing lists at a minimum. Look for most state emergency management agencies post their daily briefing or daily operations information online. It'll give you an idea what they're thinking, how they're preparing, what resources they're moving, what conversations they're having. It will help you.
I think at the very, very least, listen to your local news channels and understand when they're telling you to evacuate, have your employees evacuate.
Yes.
And follow those guidances.
In terms of weather, you can listen to your local forecast. You should. But I find all of that a little melodramatic. And what you need as a business leader is the straight skinny on what's going on. And the best place to get that is where the forecasters are getting it, which is the National Hurricane Center. It's part of the National Oceanographic Administration, NOAA. It's free. So you want to look at that. Their updates are great. They are a little scientifically geeky, weather geeky.
I like weather geeky.
But their maps are great. I mean, it shows you their current thought on where it's going. You can listen to their audio forecast, which will tell you what the models are thinking and telling them. And there's no melodramatic, hyperbolic spin.
Just the facts.
Here's the facts. Here is
Exactly.
what is going on. And these guys know. I mean, they're flying aircraft into the storm, taking sensor readings. They know they've got a really good handle on what they think is going to happen.
They're not flying into this storm, though. Not right now.
They tell us they do.
I know. I don't know.
They fly around.
Maybe. Or maybe around. Maybe close. In the vicinity.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to them.
Yeah.
Crazy Air Force people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in advance of the storm, we have to think about planning. And there's a lot of things to do that really should probably start now, in the next day. And that is, and here we're thinking more about being in a business or a nonprofit that has assets or people in the region. But I think the first thing you need to start with is to think about communication and to kind of have a centralized source of truth. We've talked about the command center or a crisis framework or an incident leader. But in our mind, whatever you have, even if it's just you and a conference room and an email address, there should be one place that those updates are coming from, even if it's just your personal mailbox. And I would get something out today about the storm, where we think it's going. I mean, what is the best factual information you can give? Our first planning call is tomorrow. And then set yourself up for success by scheduling those calls and begin to lead your team through that. You want to include leaders in the impacted area, and you'll want to include your partners at your headquarters or corporate office, whatever you call it, that have a role to play in storms.
Right. So business partners that have the role to play in storms. We're talking about facilities, people that are watching over the different locations that you may have in the impacted areas or the outskirts of the impacted areas. You're going to want to have your crisis communications folks on the line. You're going to want to have your travel people on the line so they can talk through business travelers in certain areas and when to evacuate and how to get them out and making sure that you're tracking those individuals.
HR.
HR for employee accountability, right? So this is going to happen in one way, shape, or another. How are you keeping track of how your employees are doing?
Do you know that they're okay? Have we made contact with them? We advise having once or twice a day calls. It just depends on the complexity of your business and what you have going on there. Usually once a day is okay. But you use the calls to level set. The calls should start with a clear, factual, situational update from you or your outside expert, perhaps a weather update from you or an outside expert, but you're level setting what's happening today. Here is the sit rep as we know it. And then go to the local leader who, you should really pick somebody senior that's going to run things on the ground, or at least can be the point of contact, a district manager, a regional director, but have them give you an update on the status of things on the ground. What are they hearing? What's the local forecast? What's the local government telling them that they should do? And then you kind of go around the horn, right? It's, okay, facilities. Do you have an update or questions? HR, update or questions? And kind of walk through that on the call. But you start to set this kind of expectation of, we're going to get together. We're going to talk about this in an organized way.
Yep.
We're going to give a clear factual update on what's going on. And then when the call's over, you're going to send a new, clear, factual update back out to leaders, stakeholders, the impacted area, your senior executives, where you're level setting, here's what's going on, and you're establishing that single source of truth.
That cadence too, right? So here's the next time you're going to hear from us.
Right.
Here's the next time we're going to meet.
Yep. Our
Here's
next update will be
discussion.
tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Right.
Urgent, important, critical, whatever you want to call it. Updates will be sent through our normal communication.
Right. But until then, the next update will be 3 p.m. tomorrow.
Things that we're going to want to think about as the storm approaches is first preparing your facility, right? So you may or may not need to board up windows. You may or may not have things on the outside of the building that need to be taken down, tied down,
Sandbag.
brought inside. Are you at risk of flooding? And of course, Harvey may have told us that, there's what you think is the normal risk of flooding, and then there's what will flood in a 1,000-year event.
Yeah.
And might change your perspective on this, but it wasn't common. It's not common for us with our clients to have to sandbag locations because we typically are not building commercial facilities in a flood area. But Harvey may have changed the calculus on that, and you might want to think about: do I need to sandbag the front of the front of the office, or
Convenience
distribution
store,
center,
or
a convenience store? A lot of the supplies for boarding and such are going to be really hard to find, so this decision needs to be reached quickly on what you need to do. And you may not need to. If your buildings are new, modern building code in the hurricane zones in the southeastern U.S., you may not need to do any of this.
Right.
Hopefully or your facility manager knows the situation that you're faced with there.
Right. And these are just things to think through. So your facilities individuals should know and understand how the buildings are and where they're situated and what's needed.
Or
So
if
if
you're
they're
leasing a building manager.
Yeah,
may
if there's a need for generator movement in certain areas, now's the time to do it, because once this happens, you will not be able to get in and out of there very easily.
The other area to plan for, we talked about personal preparedness, but it's good to remind your employees to think about this. You also need to make sure that your employees have time to be able to prepare at home and understand the evacuation situation, and that you're closing your business far enough in advance of an evacuation so that you and your family and your employees and their families can evacuate safely and get to wherever it is you need to go to be out of the storm's area of harm.
Yeah, so I'm given all of this information and knowing what we've done in the past. Hurricane Harvey obviously just happened. We had a lot of lessons learned from that. Maybe we should discuss that a little bit and then move on to Irma. What do you think, Bryan?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with Harvey, we managed the response for several clients where we were doing the whole thing. We were running their conference calls. We were sending out their communication. We were kind of helping them manage through the situation.
Providing them updates that we were obtaining.
Right. And then in other cases, we had clients where we were just providing some customized weather reporting and some once or twice daily situational updates on what was happening. And we were helping them connect with information like shelters and road closures and how to gain access to impacted areas to recover facilities and all of that. So I think that, there's a handful of lessons learned that come to mind when it comes to Harvey. The biggest one is something we've always known about hurricanes and we've forgotten in the last several years because we haven't had a major hurricane come ashore. And that is that the hurricane is really not the problem.
Right.
It's what happens after the hurricane. It's the flooding and the long-term recovery that pose the bigger challenges. The hurricane, well, you can board up and get out, and you can ensure by doing so that you're safe and your business is probably going to be okay.
And your employees are
And
going
your
to be
employees are
okay
gonna be fine.
as long as they evacuate. when
But
they're
but
told to.
it's coming back into it's the flooding and the the lack of critical infrastructure like power, gas, water, utilities, road access
And the unknown
really becomes a challenge. And there's the unknown. A lot of this you won't know until you go to recover your business
Yep.
after the storm has passed through and the sun is shining, and you're
Right.
like, this is the hard part.
And it may take some time. We had a client who couldn't get into where they had a building, right? So
Right. It took 5 days
didn't
post
know.
landfall. 5 days post landfall to ascertain a building's situation
Lost
because we
power.
couldn't get to it.
Right.
Building lost power and network connectivity, and we simply could not get there. And then Saturday, we finally got in, and the building was fine. And we were fully expecting flooding because we had lost power, and we could tell that remotely.
So not always catastrophic, but you don't know is the fear of the unknown, not
Right.
really knowing what's going on with your properties in that area.
Right. And another lesson learned with Hurricane Harvey is that having the public-private partnerships for information is probably one of the most important things that you can do. In this case, we connected our clients directly with the Texas Department of Public Safety, with FEMA, DHS, and with other
Local EOCs.
local EOCs, county EOCs in particular, that had county and city EOCs that had information. But we were also taking all of that, filtering it into one report and sharing that with our clients because it was easy. They didn't have crisis teams. So it was easier for them to consume what we would give them than listen to 4 conference calls a day. We were able to do that and kind of summarize what was going on. But those partnerships are critical. I mean, understanding where shelters are, where gas is, what areas are just completely not reachable, the road situation, how law enforcement is going to manage access to impacted areas, and what credentials or pre-notification need to be in place. These are all things that were big lessons learned through all that. And the last one is the most important thing you can do for your business is to just take care of your team. The thing that I think stood out with all of our clients were the efforts undertaken to make sure that the team was safe and that the company was going to help them by providing information and in pay continuance, disaster pay, as they worked through challenges like having their homes flood.
Yeah, so the teams and their
losing
families.
vehicles
Yeah.
and having injuries.
Right.
Were all things that happen. And there are folks that will have an enormous bond of loyalty to their employer because of how their employer acted and treated them during this situation. But it easily could have been
Yep.
that the company did nothing. And
We've seen that
Yeah,
time
we've
and
seen
time
that too.
again, right? So the taking care of the employee and the family goes a long way.
mind you, we don't work for companies that treat their teams that way. But
No, nor would we recommend that.
we wouldn't recommend doing that either. The other thing that came up in the post-recovery stage is, look, after the dust settles and you get into recovery, you start to see the stories of the impact of a hurricane on people, right? We saw stories of, we had the police officer in Houston that drowned,
Yeah.
trying to get to work. We know of other situations where people who were trying to help were killed or seriously injured. But you also just see these images of great devastation, and you're wondering how do you help? How can you help? And your help is needed.
Yeah.
You can make donations of cash
To reputable sources.
to reputable sources. The Red Cross is one. The American Logistics Aid Network, or ALLEN, is another that's run by a friend of ours, Kathy Allen Fulton. They really work to get logistics. They really manage logistics for companies to get aid into an impacted area. Or you can, for more, and there's tons more of reputable orgs, you can go to the National VOAD, Volunteer Organizations Assisting in Disasters website, and there's a whole list of what they need.
Right.
If you really want to give goods, or where else you can give cash. But the worst possible thing you can do is just show up.
Yeah, it seems like the best thing. Like they must need my help.
Right.
I'll just show up there and they can point me in the right direction. But there are issues to that, right? So you show up there and you're at the local EOC and they are already overwhelmed and swamped with everything they need to do. And though you think that you're helping, you're really not. Now they have somebody else they have to move out of there. So don't just show up. There are plenty of organizations that you can volunteer through, and they will deploy you. They're going to be working in partnership with those local areas and being able to determine where's the best place for you to help.
So Red Cross, American Logistics Aid Network, National VOAD, all can help you find the right place to donate, but self-deploying, as we call it, and just showing up or collecting teddy bears or whatever the item is and just showing up is bad.
Yeah.
It's not going to help. It will cause more problems than it will solve.
Yep. And then following those organizations like the American Red Cross, they're going to have logistically understand and know what supplies they need and where to disseminate them to. So otherwise you're just sending stuff that unfortunately would then later have to be destroyed, and it's not actually getting to the people that need it.
Right.
So those are kind of the lessons learned, at least that I can think of right now.
Yep. I think those are all good. Hurricane Irma is coming. Take it seriously. It's Monday. The storm track will shake out Tuesday and Wednesday. I would say by the end of the day, Thursday, early end of the day, Wednesday, tomorrow, or by Thursday afternoon, evening, we're going to have a really good idea where this is going. And heed the local warnings. If they tell you to evacuate, get out. There's nothing in your house worth sticking around for in the face of something like this that's coming your way. And if we can help,
Yeah, we're here.
we're here to help. Take a look at bryghtpath.com/hurricanes. And we have a little bit of information on the services that we can provide that might help you as a hurricane approaches Florida, the southeastern United States. And if you're there, good luck.
God bless.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Managing Uncertainty, produced by the experts at Bryghtpath. To receive notifications of new episodes, join our newsletter at bryghtpath.com or subscribe through your favorite podcast player, such as iTunes or Google Play. Learn more about the services and trusted advice from Bryghtpath by visiting bryghtpath.com. That's BRYGHTPATH.com.